I never expected a half-empty gas tank to expose my wife's secret life, but that single moment shattered everything I thought I knew. What followed was a painful unraveling of lies that forced me to confront my past and choose a different future. There comes a point in every man's life when he realizes that all the painful lessons he thought had shaped him actually taught him nothing. A moment when he sees history repeating itself, but with far heavier consequences than before. My name is Aaron. I operate drilling rigs in the outskirts of Garland, Texas. 5 years ago, I believed I had finally found the right partner, someone I could trust after the disaster of my first marriage. It turned out to be one of the biggest illusions I ever created for myself. My first marriage barely survived a year. Long enough to disrupt everything in my routine, yet just long enough to understand the woman I married was not the woman I had imagined. After that heartbreak, I made a private oath. Next time I would be wiser, sharper, less romantic, and more grounded. And then Brianna entered my life. She worked as a background actress, mostly small roles, but she looked like someone who could easily land a leading part if she wanted. Dark hair, striking green eyes, and a smile that could convince even the most skeptical man she was telling the absolute truth. She convinced me. We married quickly, too quickly, but I told myself that maybe fast decisions were just my style. My job meant long days far from home. Most of my time was spent drilling core samples in mines and running geological surveys. Trips lasted 2 to 3 days, sometimes more. Brianna stayed in our apartment in Garland, and I always drove home believing she was waiting for me, believing that my absence was simply part of our life together, or so I thought. Last winter was brutally cold, one of those gray Texas winters where the sun seems to go missing. I returned from a work trip on a Friday evening, left my rig at the site, and went to pick up our car. I had filled the tank before leaving, like I always did, but when I sat down behind the wheel, the gauge was halfway down. I stared at it for a long moment. Half a tank gone in 2 days. Garland isn't a big place. The supermarket was only a few kilometers away. Even with errands, even with detours, it didn't add up. I asked her that night as she lounged on the couch scrolling through her phone, "Did you go somewhere?" I tried to sound neutral. "Just groceries," she said lightly, without looking up. Nothing special. Any other man would have believed her instantly. But I had seen this scene before. I knew too well what a calm lie sounded like. That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to her steady breathing, remembering my first wife, remembering the nights I cried quietly in the bathroom, promising myself I would never be so blind again. Apparently, I had lied to myself more than she ever had. The next morning, I found an excuse to use her laptop. "Brianna, my software crashed. Mind if I use yours?" She agreed easily. Why wouldn't she? Someone confident in their lies rarely hesitates. I opened the browser, my hands trembling slightly, unsure what I was even hoping to find. Then I saw something. Telegram was open, a chat with someone named Tyler, marketing director, someone I had never heard of. Most of the messages were deleted, but you don't need the whole script to understand the plot. They met regularly, Saturdays, consistently. While scrolling, a new message popped up from him. "Same plan as always today?" My stomach tightened. I closed the browser immediately. Never open a fresh message that alerts the sender, and place the laptop back exactly as I found it. When she returned to the room, I saw a flicker of fear cross her eyes. She opened the laptop quickly, almost expecting the screen to scream the truth at her. "Did you notice anything?" she asked. Too quickly, too stiffly. "No, everything's working fine," I said. She pretended to relax, but her eyes betrayed her. "I want to go to the mall in a bit," she added suddenly. I nodded. 20 minutes later, she left. I waited 5 minutes, then checked out the window. She got into our car. I sat down with her laptop again and logged out all active Telegram sessions, except the one I was on. Then I enabled location sharing with Tyler, a feature she probably never knew existed, and then I waited. Soon, I watched her location move across town toward a large parking parking lot near a mostly empty shopping center. I followed at a distance. From my parked car, I saw exactly what I expected. Her walking with a dark-haired man, Tyler. They kept some space between them. No touching, but cheaters playing careful are still cheaters. They entered a hotel together. I sat there staring at the entrance. I could have rushed inside, confronted them, shouted, demanded explanations. But anger wasn't my companion this time. Clarity was. I walked inside the hotel quietly, found their room by following the muffled sound of their voices, saw the number, memorized it, and left. I didn't need to see more. When she returned home later that day, I sat in the kitchen sipping coffee. I looked at her the moment she stepped inside. "Nice trip to the mall?" I asked softly. She froze for half a second. "Yes, I bought some things. Underwear." The speed of her answers told me the truth more clearly than any confession ever could. "Brianna, I know about Tyler." Her entire face drained of color. No attempt to ask who Tyler was, no shocked confusion, nothing, just silence. "I know about the hotel, the Saturdays, everything." She collapsed into a chair and whispered, "How?" "It doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is what happens next." I told her about my first marriage, about the betrayal, about giving too many chances. She cried, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of fear, maybe because she really had loved me in her own way. But love isn't an excuse, not for this. "We're getting divorced," I said. "I've already spoken to a lawyer." She looked at me like someone watching their world fall apart in slow motion. But I was calm, focused, done. The next 2 weeks passed in a suffocating silence. She boxed her belongings. She tried calling me, tried explaining, tried bargaining. I didn't engage. The lawyer informed me she had moved in with Tyler temporarily, and a month later I found out they had already broken up. He wasn't interested in keeping her. For him it had been fun. For her it had been something more, but not enough. The court split everything evenly. Apartment, savings, all of it. I didn't fight. I didn't want to drag the process out. I only wanted my life back. At the final hearing, Brianna looked exhausted, small, almost fragile. I thought I might feel satisfaction, maybe even vindication, but I felt only relief, a quiet exhale from deep inside my chest. Not because she was hurt, but because I finally understood something vital. I wasn't cursed with unfaithful partners. I was just choosing the wrong people and ignoring the quiet warnings inside myself. Years passed. Nearly 3 years after the divorce, I saw Brianna on a street in Garland walking with another woman, laughing. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did. I kept walking. For the first time, that memory felt distant, like a story from someone else's life. 4 years after the divorce, I met Bianca at a newspaper office. She was genuine, intuitive, and steady. She didn't perform emotions. She simply lived them honestly. I married her the next year, and soon we had our daughter, Ella. When Ella was 3, I held her tiny hand as we walked to the park, watching her marvel at trees and birds, and I knew I could have never had this with Brianna, not because she might have been a bad mother, maybe she would have been fine, but because I would have never been able to look at her without remembering that hotel lobby, that cold truth, that silent moment when everything snapped into focus. The years that followed taught me that scars aren't signs of failure. They're proof that you endured something harsh and kept going. They're reminders of resilience. I never poisoned Ella with stories about her mother, but as she grew older, I shared the broader lessons about honesty, about choices, about how betrayal can reshape your life. When Ella was old enough, she asked me if I had forgiven Brianna. I told her the truth. I forgave her long ago, not for her sake, but because holding on to anger only hurts the one carrying it. Life with Bianca became something I didn't know I needed. Not dramatic and chaotic like before, but steady, honest, full of small daily choices to love with intention. We communicated openly, cared for each other without pretending, and protected what we built. Even now, sometimes the old memories echo when Bianca comes home late, or when I see a scene in a movie that resembles my past. But the echoes grow quieter over time. They stop predicting the future and become what they always were, remnants of an old life. The biggest lesson wasn't about catching a cheater, it was about choosing myself. Choosing a life where truth isn't something you have to chase. Choosing peace over chaos. Choosing growth over bitterness. And that's the life I have now. A life built not out of revenge or fear, but out of understanding. A life where the past is just a chapter, not the whole story. A life where love is something steady, not something you have to constantly question. And every day, I'm grateful I walked away when I did. Because leaving wasn't the ending. Leaving was the beginning.